live, and I'm reading out of Joan Marshall Grant's book, Speaking from the Heart, Ethics, Reincarnation, and What It Means to be Human. Joan Marshall Grant was an author, and this is a book about her and also parts from her, all put together beautifully by Nicola Bennett, Jane Lahr, and Sophia Rossoff. I am now at chapter 9, Crossing the River. Joan believed that if she was in a position to help another human being, she must do so, and in this Charles joined her. Together they exhibited an almost insane generosity of spirit, matched insofar as the overdraft could be stretched, on the material level as they shared their home and any resources they had with a far-flung network of family, friends and acquaintances, a percentage of whom Joan would later describe as lame ducks. One of the services they sought to do was to ease the transition from life, through death, to the other side of the river. Qualified by her memories of having died before, so knowing from her own experience that death was not to be feared, Joan expected to do this work all her life, from the trenches of the First World War, through the Second, to the deaths of friends as they reached old age. Similarly, she felt it her responsibility to be in attendance in an upstairs body at any operation or perilous journey undergone by those close to her, so as to keep a protective eye out for their safety and well-being. She made notes for a lecture on death at a later date, but it seems to have to serve as a useful introduction to the following pieces. First of which concerns the accidental death of a teenager, a boy called here David, of whom they were very fond and spent his holidays with them. On his return to boarding school, he fell by accident out of a window. The second is about the suicide of a woman we named Trish, about whom we know nothing apart from what the writing tells us. She was disturbed in an unhappy marriage and living in Chester, quite some distance from where they were in mid-Wales. Notes for Lecture on Death by Joan. When I was about 7, I read one of Francis Bacon's essays, which began, "Men fear death as children fear to go in the dark." I knew that to wake suddenly in darkness could be very alarming, and often was, for in the dark I had no means of orientating myself, not only where is Joan, but who is Joan? What age, what colour am I at this moment of here and now? But surely the strange grown-ups could not have forgotten what dying felt like. They remember their yesterdays only too well. If I had offered one of them, they reminded me of it days or weeks or months afterwards. How could they be born unless they had died? How could a tree have new leaves unless it has shed them during the winter? They were apparently delighted when one of them, or the child, or even the grandchild, gave birth to a baby. Even if the baby was sad because it was so nasty that it had to turn a new page of its copybook because there were so many blots on the previous page that there was no more clean paper on which to write. So why did they pretend to be so sad because someone happened to die? Were they really sad? Why should they pretend to be sad and talk in hushed voices just because someone changed one body for another? Why did they grudge other people a holiday, especially those people whose body had become more irksome than winter combinations? Gradually, very gradually, I discovered that grown-ups believed that dying was really going alone into the dark. They forgot the person and thought only of the body, which had become no longer useful. Surely dying was a thing they must all remember, because it had happened to each of them so often. But why did they make such sad grimaces, have special voices with which to talk of those they called dead? People whom Mother had most cordially disliked and was sure to snub if they were to invite them to luncheon became poor dear so-and-so, the moment their current body became redundant. She did not go so far as to attend their funerals, but she telephoned the florists to contribute a suitable wreath. If I ventured to say that it would have been more helpful to send the person proper flowers while they could still be pleased by this kindly gesture, instead of adding another wreath to rot on their graves, she became annoyed and accused me of being hard-hearted. People whom Mother would denigrate and lib became targets at which no arrows of wit or malice could henceforth be directed. Never speak ill of the dead was an axiom. But why did someone become venerable merely because they had undergone the most commonplace and inevitably experience which everyone has done so often, the act of dying? Had grown-ups really forgotten that they had died very often? Joan tried to contact Charles rowing David across the river. Joan: I thought David was behind you in the boat, but he's not. Was the water flat, calm, at twilight? Charles: No, I was rowing in the bow and he was rowing too, his back to me. It was full sunlight, not a river either, an estuary, or the sea. Joan: I can see David walking along alone at a seashore, wearing a fisherman's jersey. A man, an officer, comes to meet him. David is asked to join them, without going through Dartmouth. I can see a long room open on one side to the mouth of an estuary and dunes and a steeply shelving beach. Sometimes people land further down the coast and walk up. Every time the boat makes a crossing, the people here know. It is sometimes better for them to be alone a little before anyone goes to meet them. Joan was able to contact David directly, so that she shared his experience. Phrases in quotes are spoken out loud. The rest is what he was thinking to himself. She was also able to contact Carmichael, and the same applies to him. David: It's like going to a new school, wondering what it is going to be like. It's always the worst part. It was decent of Charles to come with me in the boat. I didn't know he knew how to row. Funny, though, we didn't get tired. It was mid-afternoon when we started rowing, and it had stopped raining. The wind fell towards evening. It must have been sunset when I landed, though I can't remember noticing the sun. I forgot to make the boat fast, and when I looked round, it had disappeared. There must have been a strong current, which I didn't notice. Perhaps that's why it was so easy to row. The sand is soft. I'm making deep footprints. Yet it is very easy walking over the dunes. Charles said he was sure they'd send someone to meet me. I wonder if they'll mind my not having any equipment. Charles said it wouldn't matter. I hope he's right. He said I needn't worry and that they'd explain everything when I got there. Funny that there are no birds there. Funny that there are no birds. There ought to be gulls in a place like this. It's so quiet. I wonder if the water's warm enough to swim in. I must try tomorrow. There's someone coming to meet me. The sand must be much harder where he is, for he's not making any footprints. He looks a nice sort of bloke. Rum that they should send a commander to meet me. But he looks friendly enough. Charles said they probably wouldn't ask how I got there. I hope they won't. If I tell them I fell, they'll think I'm such an awful fool. The man isn't at all surprised to see me. He says he nearly always comes this way in an evening, in case another's boat made a landing. Sometimes they are several people at the same time, but then they come in a pinnacle, or even in an admiral's barge. I say to him, "It is awfully good of you to let me come here. You know I hadn't passed into Dartmouth, a naval training college, yet." He says that doesn't matter. Dartmouth's not one of our worries. Then he laughs and says, "And sometimes Mere cadets are admirals up here. The barracks are white, only one story. There don't seem to be any sentries or anything. I suppose they call it a ship, like the Ganges. Or is it different here? The man takes me into a long room overlooking the sea. No, it is a wide estuary. The hills beyond are very low and there are no towns, so it can't be Plymouth. I'm glad I'm wearing sea boots and a fisherman's jersey. I didn't remember I'd changed. It's funny, the way all ranks are sitting in the same room. There's an able seaman talking to an admiral, and he doesn't even take his cap off or his pipe out of his mouth. I'm to go with a man who met me. His name's Carmichael. At least he says I'm to call him that. He's got a red beard and very blue eyes. I think I ought to tell him how I got here. But when I do, he says he knows all about it. He says he was with Frobisher and went to sleep up in the mizzen shrouds and woke up on quite a different deck to the one he fell on towards. Carmichael: you'll like it here, and if you don't, we'll send you somewhere else. This is only one of hundreds of landings. Some you can get to by walking, and some by road, and some come in airplanes. And of course, the scenery is different depending on where you go. A few of the senior chaps made this. I think they might have made a bit more grass and some trees, but they like the dunes. You may miss the birds at first, but you'll soon get used to it. You can sleep in my room until you settle down here. It will take you 2 or 3 days to get your bearings. Then I'll take you on your first cruise. We are attached to a destroyer in the Yellow Sea. One of the able seamen was pretty sick with pneumonia yesterday, and I thought we should have to send a boat out for him. But he'll have to put up with it for a bit longer. There's not much doing here today. You'll see plenty of action. I expect you'd like some tea before you turn in. I'm not hungry, but you can have anything you like. No, we're not on rations. What would you like? Tea, kippers and jam? Take as much and sugar as you like. Take as much butter and sugar as you like. You look pretty sleepy. When you're finished, we'll both turn in. Report to me in the morning. I'll hear when you shout. Got everything you want? David: yes, thank you, sir. I know it's going to be much more exciting than Dartmouth. Carmichael: sleep well. Notes: everything would be done to make the transition as smooth as possible. Newcomers eat and sleep for the first few days until they lose the desire to do so. The other men wore many different kinds of naval uniforms, whichever was most familiar to them. They're looking after the down here Navy attached to specific ships. They're looking after the down here Navy attached to specific ships. The absence of birds is because the highest level of consciousness of birds is below this level. Any birds would have to be special creations, having no separate life of their own. I needed a much higher degree of concentration to contact than usual, and Joan became hypersensitive to noise. A book dropped by Charles sounded as loud as a cannon, and even his breathing was so loud that she thought he was sucking at an empty pipe. Joan and Charles felt rejected when David's relatives completely dismissed their account of how they helped their boy cross the river after his accident. They had hoped to offer them some degree of comfort. Charles said that they were feeling quite depressed when Joan received a message from someone upstairs. I think it's from Nay Sarah, she said to Charles. Only a man's own spirit shall judge of his increase, and only the faint-hearted grow small in the light of the sun. Say neither I am great nor I am small. Say only, I am what I am, but say also, tomorrow I shall be what I am, increased by the wisdom of another day. Tomorrow I shall be what I am, increased by the wisdom of another day. He who looks over his shoulder when he walks towards the sun sees his own shadow. Only those who walk away from the sun see greatness in their shadow. To say, I am unworthy, is to blaspheme against your brothers. To say, I am not, is to blaspheme against the gods. The man of humility can suffer no humiliation, for he is not afraid of crowds, nor does he try to make of them his staff. Receive the bounty of the gods and stretch forth your hands to receive their bread to the hungry. It is easy to give to those who bless your name as their benefactor, but only the strong can give to those who call your gold base metal, who say your bread is dust. Trish. On the 18th of June, Joan had a period lasting about 3/4 of an hour from 12:30 to 1:15 of extreme dissociation and panic. She knew she was being called, but was not sure by whom. Charles had much the same feeling. They were both shopping in Shrewsbury. The dissociation was sufficient for them to forget where they had left the car, and both thought they had seen the other drive away in it. In fact, they left it and both walked away. At 8 a.m. on the 19th, they were told that Trish had gassed herself the previous day. The following is a gold key on Trish. During the first part of the recording, Kathleen Barker was taking down Joan's dictation, while Charles was completing the freeing of Trish. That's why I didn't want to bring my furniture. Their name was on every piece of it. It was no use trying to escape from them. If I had run away, I should have only led the enemy to my friends. All the things in the house were spies they had set on me, to watch me. Philip's spectacles were windows through which they watched me all the time. I broke the clock because it was theirs. It kept saying, you can't get away, you can't get away. If I sat down in a chair, it was them holding me. Everything I ate was their foods. Their plates were their hands holding our food to keep me alive as their prisoner. I want to be ill. But my body is so horribly strong. Mother and the woman belong to her husband, body and soul. My body is my enemy too. It makes me eat. It keeps on breathing. It won't stop. It's no good running away, for they will follow me. They can hide themselves in anything, even come down wires and through the telephone. I tried to read, and then I remembered it was their magazine. That's why Mrs. Findlay sent me magazines, so that she will be reading aloud to me whenever I look at them. There's only one friendly thing in the house, for they haven't given it to me. It doesn't even belong to me. I only hired it from the gas company. It might help me to escape. If I asked it to help, it would betray me. It isn't one of the spies they have put here. It was kind to me. It warned me twice so that I heard the doorbell and was able to get up and answer it. The man with the parcel looked at me as if he knew what I was going to do. I said I was sorry I'd kept him waiting, that I had a headache and had been asleep. I could see he wasn't suspicious anymore. Philip says he's worried and is going to get a doctor. They will pretend I'm going to be taken away from my enemies and try to keep them out. I shall have no friends there. Philip says the proper doctors won't let Joan and Charles come to see me because they are not qualified. He tries to make me believe that so I wouldn't go into their kind and friendly home. Only mad people go to bed when they aren't ill. I prayed every night to be so ill so I could get away without shaming anybody, but they didn't listen. Joan said that they, the gods, would always listen. that they were on a telephone which never got wrong numbers. But she didn't know Fraser had tapped the line, so I daren't use it. Mother says that people who kill themselves go to hell. Joan said that was nonsense, that there wasn't any hell except what you make for yourself. Mother and Philip and the Findlays are frightened of hell, so if I go there, they will leave me alone. They would be too frightened to come after me. I don't think... I don't know how long this was off, so I will stop this here now and check and then read the bit after.